Lifestyle with Lorianne. I am Coach Lorianne, America's #1 Take Action Success Coach and Strategist, empowering, educating, inspiring, and igniting people to take action with jet propulsion. We assist people to find and embrace their life purpose, live their highest vision, and become the next best version of themselves, forging a strong foundation so you can forge to success. If you need any information about that, please email us at lacasdia@ldcstrategy or visit ldcstrategies.com. We'd love to speak to you. Today on Healthy Lifestyle, we have our beautiful friend, Doriana Fontanella. Now, we're going to talk today about writing, your writing, good writing, proper grammar. That probably wasn't proper grammar, but don't tell Doriana. So we're going to talk about that today because Doriana, no matter how far and wide she travels, we always find our way home, and that is so true. Our years in a more traditional career, far from the city where she was born and raised, she finds herself going back to a former avocation. She recently retired from a more traditional career in Denver, Colorado, and her other business venture is Right Connection LLC, which is also based in Denver, Colorado, where she works with local authors. And through her connections, she was able to get them speaking engagements at local bookstores, radio station interviews. One author got a book launch with a national bookseller. And her writings can be found in various places online. She originally is from the Bronx. You may detect that from her accent. I'm not sure. And yes, it's the Bronx with a capital T, the Bronx, where she attended the university, then College of Mount St. Vincent. And as a history and philosophy major, oh, me too, I was philosophy minor. She enjoys the nuances and structures of language. She volunteers at a local nonprofit, giving her time to editing various materials. And at a recent 2024 Volunteer Appreciation Luncheon, she was singled out with the following acknowledgement. I reach out every couple of months to a staff aide to help with editing a document. Doriana, who enjoys editing, she always responds quickly and with professionalism. I know that I am getting back a carefully edited piece. That is unbelievable. Welcome to the show, Doriana. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Doing well. Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you here, and I do love what you do. And you are from the Bronx with a capital T. It is so good. How did you end up in Denver, Colorado, of all places?
Well, I went to law school in the Midwest, Notre Dame. I spent 2 years in South Bend, and in between the second year I was in London, and it just seemed, I don't know, it was a different America. You know, I grew up in the Bronx, very ethnic Italian Jewish neighborhood, and I thought I met Leave It to Beaver. Beaver Cleaver was my classmate, and I thought I have to go see what it's like to live out there. And I wound up staying, but the heart is still New York.
Oh, without a doubt.
And the attitude.
And the attitude. Yeah. It's like, oh my gosh, we talk New York fast and we talk with absolutely our hands and attitude. So, and also you go to Italy, right?
Yes. I try to get there at least every other year. I have an apartment there, so I like to spend time. I have tons of family all over Italy, actually all over the place, South America, Canada.
Wow.
But
that's great. Dibs on your Italian place when you decide to sell it and get a bigger, better place. So dibs. You're near Naples, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Amalfi Coast, lunch at on the Amalfi Coast is just a drive away.
Oh my gosh. I just got back in September from the Amalfi Coast and going to Sicily with my partner, Anthony. And I'm just, I was in love with Italy before when I went to Tuscany and Venice and Milan and Rome. But oh my gosh, now I'm ever so more in love with it over there. Love the people, love the food, love the culture, love the feeling over there. It's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. I love my America. I do know where my bread is buttered. And I love being here, but so beautiful. It's one of my favorite places to go in the world. Absolutely is. So let's talk about you getting into writing of all things, which was, I don't know if I ever shared this story with you, Doriana, but in junior high school, my English teacher, I was a straight A student. My English teacher told me that I was the worst writer in the world and gave me absolute rigor mortis of writing from that point forward in my whole career until I went to law school. I was petrified of writing because apparently I was terrible at it. An expert, my teacher, told me so. So that has always been a scary proposition for me. And when I went to law school, my legal writing teacher, said, Lorianne, why does your face melt off every time I give you an assignment? And I told her the story, and she goes, you have syntax errors and things like that. But she goes, your concepts are good. So just worry about the concepts. I'll worry about the editing. She says to me, you can hire somebody to do your editing, someone like Doriana Fontanella. But she told me that, and I was like, oh, okay. And that's what progressed me to write the chapter in the book that I wrote. And it was also that, and the woman who did the book with me, Kate, she said to me, Lorianne, if you could change one person's life by doing the writing, is it worth it for you to just power through it? And I said, absolutely. And that's what got me to do it. So how did you get into writing?
Well, I'm actually shy, and I know we've known each other, but never in person for years. And so I don't really like to speak in front of people, but I always liked writing. And then I kind of wrote I didn't keep a diary. What do I think? Oh, I went to school, I came home, went to the pizzeria on the way home, did my homework. So I just would put thoughts into like little stories or poems, and it went by the wayside. But I went to law school, and I actually did much better in writing than other classes because I had more time to think about things. But I forgot how to write. I would write letters to people and they thought they were interesting, but I'm writing legal documents and I have to make sure the comma's in the right place, and the words are structured so. And then of course, okay, here's a secret. Lawyers use templates. And then I have to make sure that what I'm writing matches the template if I have to stick something in there. But it was boring. And I realized that my creative juices, it's creative to be a lawyer because I did estate planning and I had people with these weird requests on how to leave property, but I didn't get to write. And so I wanted to start a writing group. And so I did that by going on to Nextdoor, and I met this local author who just wanted to get to know me. And then she put out something on Nextdoor looking for an assistant, and it was like it was maybe minimum wage at the time, but I got to do it and I got to edit other people's blogs. I got to write a blog. I got her this book launch and all of that. And I thought, I really need to focus more on that because I can be free and I write with the pen. I remember, I think it was you who said that actually writing with the pencil, the graphite brings out something.
Yes, it's a mental connection. It sets off your synapses, which I thought the interesting of the graphite on the piece of paper is really good for you. And you will recall it better, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah. And when I was in college, we didn't have computers. And I was in the honors class, so I had to write all my drafts of my term papers in longhand. But I wrote this big senior thesis. It wound up being 92 pages. My professor was a former diplomat from Czechoslovakia. He couldn't even read, and he would call it my hieroglyphics because it was a combination of personal note hand, which is stenography for college students, and abbreviations. So now I refuse to use any contractions, any shorthands, any abbreviations. I just write in notebooks.
And that's funny because I know you said in a meeting we were in is that, you don't use contractions. And I'm like, I meant to ask you about that. And so now I know why. I find it humorous, excuse me, that you said that, tickle in the throat, that you said about the commas, because when I first met you, it was we were both on an executive board advising a president. And I used to refer to you as, who's that comma queen again? Because you were pointing out in the bylaws that we were talking about that, the syntax was wrong, or the comma was in the wrong place, or this was not accurate, or whatever. And I was like, that's amazing that she knows that. And I made a mental note. I need to remember to meet Doriana because that's something that I still don't feel a strength of mine. Although I do love to write, I don't, I'm not an editor. I don't like to edit people's things. I like to edit the concept, not the grammar. And you're really great at grammar. So how did you become the comma queen, other than I gave you that title?
Well, I part of it was, I think I stumbled upon, because I don't think they ever taught us that in school, but the Oxford comma. So A, comma, B, comma, and C. But I also knew that if I was drafting a document, I had to be consistent.
Yeah.
So if I'm using a template that did not have Oxford commas, at some point I just had to give up, because if I'm writing 5 pages and the template's 50, I just have to forget about that. But I just became very aware, because it does, it creates a pause in or an apposition, you know, like my sister, comma, Laura, comma, you know, because if you have more than one sister, then you'd say my sister Laura as opposed to my sister Lorianne. But if it's
Right.
only one sister, it's my sister Laura. And so I became, and then, you know, the contraction thing is, because I was in a professional setting, I really hated when I received a letter from somebody and there was a contraction in it. It's a letter. I mean, it's one thing when you speak to each other, but this is written word, and you're sending me a professional letter and you used a contraction. And I thought, no, I can't do it.
Oh
Cannot
God,
do
now I have to fix my letters. All right. All right. And I noticed you prefer longhand to computers or laptops, right?
Yeah, there's something about pens and paper, or maybe pencils. I'm gonna have to try that. And paper is to just I don't know, it creates a flow. And the idea of using, well, I used, when I was doing my term papers back then, contractions and all of that, because you your brain works faster than your hand. So
Clearly.
you cannot get your words out as quickly as you writing them as well as you're thinking them. But writing them out will slow you down and think about it too. But then, you know, then if you see my notebooks, there's X's and arrows because I have to move the paragraph. Then I'll if I'm going to put it out somewhere, then I will type it.
Right.
But I initially write it on paper, and then I'd like to go to the library, except during COVID, you couldn't go, there was no library. And I actually write down where I was when I wrote it, like
Oh, that's cool.
where in the library I was and what time I started and what time I ended it. So
Wow.
so it keeps a little diary, if you will, of things.
Yeah, that's your version of a diary. That's your version of
Yeah,
journaling.
I guess so. Because,
Yeah.
you know, what am I going to write? I got up this morning and took a walk along this, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So what is your process in really reviewing and editing someone's documents or writings?
Well, I did a few, and most of them were blogs for either their own that person's own website, or the website that this author had me edit. Uh, Blogs are supposed to be conversations. So I refuse to end my sentences in a preposition, but I have to let it go when it comes to a contraction. So sometimes you just have to let it go in someone else's writing. So I take that and then I save it as it is, and then do another save as, where I do the edits, and then I run a comparison. So the person receiving it actually sees, this is what I did and this is what Doriana is doing. If I sent them to this author, I sent her the original, sent her my version and the red line version. Then I would actually go to her website, pull off what she put to see what changes she made to it. But
Yeah.
if it's I had to do edit a blog for someone's website for a professional, and so I try to make it more of a conversation,
Mhm.
because you don't want to preach to your prospective customers or clients. It's a conversation. Um, Rearrange, because sometimes people just write things and they're nervous about writing, so they just throw
Yeah.
things down. And so I work it around there. And if they're getting technical, I try to make it a little, I put it in some kind of layman's, and some things I don't know what it is, you know, so I have to look it up, and I'm like, well, you bet, you know, make sure that I described this, whatever the initials were, correctly, but put it in some kind of layman's terms so the person who's receiving it knows, you know, put exclamation points, like the thing you read, you know, yes, it's the Bronx, you know.
So
And
true. So true. Capital T.
you know, so you try to make, you know, if you're trying to pose a question, to make it more of a conversation. So if it's that, if I'm just sometimes I just write down thoughts, and I'd need to go back and rework them so that they can be something that somebody may want to read.
Yeah, yeah. How do you keep the person's voice though? Because you speak a very particular way. So how do you maintain that person's voice in the writing so it sounds like they wrote it? Because sometimes, like especially with AI, I can tell when AI wrote it as opposed to when someone wrote it, because I speak to them and I know their syntax, I know how they write. It's not in their cadence, it's not in their voice. I was really good about finding. I found some letters from my mom and my dad. And you could hear the difference in the cadence in their writing, believe it or not, between my mother and my father, totally different in the style and the language choices that they made. So how do you maintain that and edit at the same time? Do you just edit for the technical, or,
Well, when I was doing the blogs, when this one author had me reach out to, she was a romance writer, and they were not nothing salacious, so it wasn't like, oh my God, I can't read this book. I'm gonna, I'm embarrassed. Nothing like that. So she had met these other romance writers at these various events, and so she had me reach out to them, and they would write. It was limited because it's a blog, so it can't be long-winded. But I never met those people, so I didn't hear their voice. So it was more of a technical and rearranging. But this one person who had me edit his blog, I could hear his voice in it. So
Yeah.
I can make it more personable.
Yeah.
And he was trying to attract customers and clients. And so I made it, I could hear him, and I kind of just picked up that cadence and how I was writing it. So I think it doesn't helps me better if I can, if it's a blog, for me to have a conversation with that person first.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who sent me first few chapters of his book. And it's not it's not going to be his voice because he's writing a book and it's other people's conversations in there, but you have to make sure that the two people conversing with each other, really don't sound as if they're the same person, because otherwise you must just stick it into a computer and let them write it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Siri or Alexa wrote it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The AI element, believe it or not, is very visible. I have a client who wrote a book, and she started with using AI. And when I was reading it, I was like, okay, but this doesn't sound like you at all. And so surely, but she just started going one chapter at a time and rewriting the chapter in her voice. And one, it was more impactful. And two, it sounded like her. So when someone meets her, someone goes to one of her workshops, it's going to sound like her. They'll already know, oh yeah, that's her, because that's how she speaks. It's like speaking to you. I know when something that you've written, because it's just very much you, and that's a good thing. That's a really good thing.
Well, and it's like when I edited these materials for this nonprofit, I was first given the materials from each different department. So there's greeters, and there's people who work in the gift shop. So I would get all these different, and I got them in pieces. And believe me, it was who wrote in 14 font and who wrote in 10. So you try to get all the fonts the same. And I just had to make sure that page 1 and page 3 looked as if, or sounded as if, the same person wrote it. Well, then I was given the volunteer handbook. And as I went to edit it, I thought, this looks familiar because I already edited it. But now I have to make every department sound as if it was written by the same person.
Yeah.
So, while the descriptions, obviously, of what each volunteer did in those departments was different, I had to make sure there's initials, acronyms, that, or whatever people use.
Sure.
Well, you only need to spell them out once. So I had to make sure that I spelled it out up there and not down here. And so that was a little bit more challenging because it was like 25, 30 pages. And now I have to make sure all of it sounds as if the same person wrote it.
Yeah.
But still make it personable, make it's going to volunteers. It's not a textbook. It's not going to, the president or whatever.
Yeah. So, coming from a marketing background, I know in marketing, we don't use punctuations. Matter of fact, we dangle participles. We do all the things that you absolutely hate. And we make claims and we don't support them necessarily because we don't have to, because it's a marketing piece. We support it at a later point. So it's about attracting people in. That and presentations too. Punctuation is a no-no on presentations. However, are you a stickler for your, and I did say,
yes.
Are
Yes,
you a stickler for punctuation? And
yes, and I learned that you're not supposed to say, I sent her an email semicolon, but comma, she didn't respond. You don't use the word but. It's supposed to be, I sent her an email and she did not respond.
Correct.
Because then
Correct.
it sounds like you're negating the person. So you have to be
Everything before you, the but gets negated.
right.
So I was like, be careful with your butts. That was always the rule. So it's really I love having this conversation with you because I love your storytelling, and I'd like to jump into more of your storytelling in the second half. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back with more Doriana Fontanella. If you want to reach out to her, it's rightconnectionsllc@gmail.com. All the information will be with this episode. So thank you so much for watching and listening. And we are going to take a short break, that is, and we will be right back. Oh my goodness. Welcome back to Healthy Lifestyle with Lorianne. I am Coach Lorianne, America's #1 take action success coach and strategist. If you would like to be a guest or lift up your business, non-for-profit, or if you have questions or comments, please email us at healthylifestylewithla@gmail.com. That's healthylifestylewithla@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. We return every single email, so please email us. We'd love to hear from you. So today, as we spoke about before, is the fact that we have Doriana Fontanella here on the show. She is an extraordinary writer. She can help you with your blogs, your websites, your newsletters, anything that you have writing. She is an unbelievable editor, really great at making suggestions and recommendations. And Doriana, welcome back to the show. And what is your ideal client or customer, if you will?
Well, someone with follow through. I mean, the person who goes, oh, well, I'll call you. We have to have lunch. And then that person never calls. So people who reach out and say, oh, I need to contact you, or people who do contact me and I said, okay, let's set up a meeting, and nothing happens. So that kind of customer, I don't have time anymore in life to track down people.
Yeah. You shouldn't have to chase them.
Nope.
Yeah. So that's not your ideal client.
Right. So anyone who's determined with follow through, and I understand life gets in the way, so you're not going to respond within 24 hours, but at least make that effort.
Oh gosh, 24 hours, that's like almost unheard of these days. So it's usually a couple days that
Right.
It takes for people to respond. It takes months before you can get hired someplace now. So
Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy. But what other characteristics do you look for, or do you look for a certain type of writing opportunity or a type of industry? What else do you look for?
Well, anything too technical would probably require a lot of I don't have the knowledge for it, so I don't want to have to spend all the time doing the research. As a former lawyer, I probably don't want to be writing blogs about certain things because I don't want to cross that line anymore of practicing law when I'm not supposed to anymore, being retired.
Gotcha.
So not doing that, but someone who wants to tell a story. I found that some clients didn't like, and this is my former lifetime, didn't like even some of my employers when I'd say, oh, I did this at this other place. Why don't we do? They don't want to hear your stories. I don't know. They think you're going to bill them for it, or, if it's your employer, he's threatened because you liked somebody else better. But people really relate to that.
Yeah.
I had somebody reach out to me because she liked my talking about my sister, but her issues had nothing to do. My sister is disabled, so it had nothing to do with my sisters or disabilities or anything like that. It had to, I don't know, maybe it just made me more personable. And some of the things that I always, in one of my presentations to my networking group back then, was to talk about personal property. When you give someone the grandfather clock, is there a story behind it?
Yeah.
The table. I mean, the scratches on the table. Was there a story? Did somebody really get mad and bang something on the table, and that's why it's like that?
Yes, I love that.
My father my parents were from Italy and my father worked construction in New York, and one of his jobs was the World Trade Center. So for all I know, his tools have cement stuck from the World Trade Center still on there. But he would come home and tell stories about that. And that's how, because I didn't grow up with most of my relatives, I have 39 first cousins and I only knew like a handful of them growing up, was to hear all these stories about them. And so I think that just creates, I don't know, it makes people at ease. And I know there's all these things on TV now, you know, every week, send us a little chapter and we'll write your story after a year. Well, is AI writing that story? Wouldn't it be better if it was, your child sitting there writing the story, or someone like me writing the story for you? So I think that makes people much more comfortable in relating to it, because you have to find something in common. I would go to these continuing education classes, and they were luncheons, and there'd be 10 of us at a table, and I was friends with one of the people at my table, and she would find it fascinating that I could find something in common with at least one person at the table. So I think the storytelling, some people are put off by it, like, oh, can't you let the past go? But I think it makes you more human.
Oh no, I use storytelling in my teaching, and when I'm coaching, you use storytelling because there's you remember it better, and you
Yes.
can connect to it. So there's a connectivity that you can't get by just giving somebody the technical version. I could tell you the technical reasons why I do something, but that's better. It's much more effective for me to tell a story that's going to kind of attach to your heart, and you're going to remember, because for whatever reason, either you connect with it, or it grabs your heart, or it takes you off guard. And I try to use all different kinds of storytelling. That's why I find storytelling important. It's actually part of the way I was taught to be a coach. Jack Canfield taught me the art of storytelling with what he does. So in learning that process, it's important. You're a storyteller, 100%.
Right, you can tell, exactly, you can tell someone all the technicalities, but if you say, but this happened to this client, and because she, this is what happened, you will remember that.
Yeah, well, because
oh, I better not do that,
Yeah, technical stuff, you don't get a visual on it, but when you're telling a story. So I have a story about changing my response. And in changing my response, I changed my outcome. So, and quick story is, my son, Nicholas, and I would, every Saturday, we would clean the house. And then in the afternoon, we would go take a ride out east on Long Island. And every Saturday we had the same bout. Okay. I tell him, please clean your room. He'd be there playing video games. I would be cleaning my room, and kind of self-talking of why he's so disrespectful. How can he live in a room like that? I don't even know if there's a rug there anymore. I swear I put one in, but I can't tell because I haven't seen the floor in I don't know how long, and this was years ago. He's 29 now. He doesn't do it anymore. I have a story to tell you about that at the end of this. So anyway, long story short, I would actually like ramp myself up, and he would be there playing his game, and I would pass, and it was like, he's disrespectful. I'm talking to myself, the whole 9 yards, and I'm getting angry. Then we would get together to go do our Saturday ride out east. And, it'd start like, hurrah, fine, I'll get in the car. And we would go out east, and then everything would kind of simmer down. Every single Saturday, Doriana, we would have this conversation, right? So one Saturday I was like, you know what? I'm going to try the law of replacement. I'm going to replace my normal response, and I'm going to give him a different response. So I walked down that Saturday down the hallway, and I just said, I'm going to close the door. And he's like, what now? And I said, I'm just going to close the door. You want to live in there like that? That's up to you. I just don't want to see it. It gives me a nervous stomach. As long as there are no small animals or food in there, I'm good with it. And so he was like, whatever. And I walk back to my room. I'm singing, I'm cleaning, I'm organizing, I'm putting things away, which makes me feel good anyway. And I turn around, and he's there leaning on my door jamb. And he's like, what's going on here? And I was like, nothing. I just don't, I don't want to argue with you about it. That's what you want. That's cool. But I don't want to look at it. So just please at least keep the door shut. And he kind of has this perplexed look on his face. He stays there a few more seconds, and then he goes back to his room. I finish up. I go down the hallway to get him to do the ride out east. And what do you think happened? Don't you know, he started cleaning up his room. And by the way, P.S., I found out that my change of response had him cleaning up his room. Also found out that his rug was blue, and I did put a rug in there. So that was an upside too. So, and three, I wasn't aggravated. I was actually agitating myself because he wasn't giving me the response I wanted. He wasn't doing what I wanted. And so I found another way to get a nice outcome out of it that still was formidable for myself. So that's a really good thing. Back to the pin is my son's 29. He's living in Brooklyn. I go visit him in Brooklyn with his girl, his fiance, and he has this beautiful glass table, and I put my glass down on the glass table, and he comes tearing across the apartment. It was like, Mom, can you use a coaster? And I was like, oh, I did my job. I'm so happy. It's like a great start. It's true. It was really true. God, Mom, would you use a coaster? I was like, oh my God, I would never think in a million years I would have heard those words out of his mouth, and I've loved it ever since. So there is a story, right? That gives you the visual, because you were probably picturing this whole thing going on. And now you understand that if you change your response, you could change the outcome. And it was such a good outcome for me. Anyway, and why do you find storytelling really important in what you do?
Well, I worked a lot with families, and that's important to me, families. And I think telling your children, sitting around the table or whatever, and telling your children stories about family and things that happened, it's fascinating, and it connects them to other members of the family. And I have a good memory, but sometimes I wish now that I had written down or taped something when my parents would tell me things. But that's how I fell in love with history. My father would my parents grew up during the war. They were children and teenagers as the war progressed in Italy. And so my parents would tell me stories, and it made me want to learn history more, because it's like studying psychology. Why do people do what they do? And so history is, why do people do what they do? And knowing why your family acts the way it does is a good. In fact, one of my blog that I did write many years ago for this one author is called "Every Story Has a Table," but I still do not owe you an autobiography. I guess now I should take out the button, put "and" in it. She changed the title and said, "I still don't owe you an autobiography." And I said, "Oh, no, this is my blog. We do not use contractions in it."
Right.
And so it's the entire thing. It's because we always judge a book by its cover. I live in a nice neighborhood here in Denver. Oh, you're so lucky. Well, I wound up moving here because my father died. My mother was in assisted living. I'd been living with them. I didn't want to live in that house anymore. And so I bought this house, and a lot of with their help. And so I didn't feel lucky. You don't know what it takes to get to where someone is. I worked for an employer who said I didn't suffer enough in life. Well, sitting there talking to him was suffering enough, right? But
oh, yikes.
somebody said you should have told him, looking at you is suffering enough. But I said, you don't know my story. You don't know what it took for me to get here. So you can't tell me I didn't suffer. We look at people who are dressed nicely and we think, oh, they have an easy life. Well, they had to work, maybe some of them inherited it, but somebody in this, that's God's gift to you. I guess you get family who can give you money, but somebody along the line worked for it.
But you don't know, even if they're suffering. Everybody has level of suffering. When I was going through some big transformation, the thing that kept me going was I knew other people were suffering more than I ever was. And I was not a happy camper at the time either. But that's what kept me going, is that I was like, okay, suck it up, princess. You got to pick yourself up and do it. There is no other option, and failure is not an option for me. So, those kind of things you kind of look at, but that's where the 4 agreements come into place, which is make no assumptions. Don't make assumptions, because you don't know. You don't know because you haven't walked in their shoes. You don't know what challenges they have on a daily basis. Maybe it's only a challenge that they get once a month. Maybe they don't see challenges as a challenge. So you have to just look inward and look at what you're doing and not compare and contrast. And that's where I swear, when my teachers used to say, keep your eyes on your own page, that's what they were talking about, is keep your eyes on your own life and don't compare. And yeah, if you're in a nice house, you probably worked your butt off for it. And if you didn't work your butt off for it, God bless you. Good for you. As my girlfriend would say, God bless them. So it's just, I'm sure that they're very happy, and she's happy that they're happy. She may not have it, the mansion, but I always say, would you really want to dust that? So
I know when I look at those big houses, I'm like, oh goodness, that's too much work to clean it. I just can't do it.
seriously, and then will I ever use all those rooms? No. So, for me, it's
But
okay.
no, but really, because we
But
do
if someone gave me a castle, I'm not saying no.
right. But you're only going to use 5 rooms out of it because you don't want to
If,
clean the others every week. But
if,
when people do say those things about, because then it opens up a conversation with that person. Because if
yeah,
you just sit there and go, oh, you're so lucky. Well, that person at some point is going to respond and go, well, I had to do this, this, and that to get there. No, you should go have a cup of coffee and discuss, life. And then you learn more about those people and you realize how they got to where they got or didn't, and maybe you can learn a lesson on, if you want to change your life, to learn from that lesson. But I found it just listening to stories that my parents would tell me, made it interesting. And I would sit there sometimes with my mother cleaning, and I was looking at boxes of pictures and, oh, that's your cousin in Argentina and that's your cousin in England. And then my father would tell stories. So I had faces to put to stories. And then I was determined to meet them. And so I had to go to Argentina right after September 11th to finally meet the last cousin who didn't die before I was born, kind of thing. And
yeah,
like, I knew all these stories, and sometimes I have to pretend I don't know the stories, because you know something about somebody and you do not want that person to know you knew it for however.
yes.
So you have to pretend like, oh, really?
Yeah, well, and you have to let somebody tell their own story. It's
Right.
it's funny because my friends call me the secret squirrel because I just don't like other people telling my story. It's not your story to tell, nor
Mhm.
do I tell your story to other people because it's not my story to tell. So I will always say, if somebody asks about me, just have them ask me. If they really want to know, they'll reach out to me and then we can have a conversation, which I totally invite. I think it's a great thing to have that and be able to share that time and become the Discovery Channel, not the dating throw up channel where they throw up their lives on you within like the first 5 minutes they meet you.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
that you learn over time as you get to know each other more and more about you. It's more interesting. And that's one of the reasons why I'm a coach. I'm very curious and I love learning about people's lives and your life and how, that your father worked here, he was in construction, that you moved out to Denver, that you have a place in Italy, that you love to travel and that you're an exquisite writer and that you love what you do. And it comes out in your writing. It definitely comes out in your writing and how you help other people do what they're doing and you guide them along. That just comes out as sheer love and the talent that you bring to the table.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like, because I was the secretary of a previous, my little networking group, and I didn't want to write. I mean, it was nice to have the templates because you had to have, this person spoke, so you have, a vice president's report, but not to put it in bullet points, is to make it flow and read well so that somebody wants to read the next thing. Because you look at bullet points, and sometimes they serve their purposes, like the volunteer handbook, there are bullet points too, but
Yeah.
if somebody did the bullet points, I just left it. I just tried to make sure that all the bullets look the same. If you're going to use
Yeah.
dots versus arrows, let's make them all look the same. But I think certain things just read better if you put prose to it and make
Yeah.
it a story.
Without a doubt. So if someone is, writing a book and wants your guidance, or has a manuscript and wants you to take a look at it, you do all those things, right?
Yes, yes.
And you,
And sometimes it's nice to get it in pieces,
yeah,
because maybe you can guide them for the next chapter. But at some point you have to read it in total
yeah,
because you do want to make sure that chapter 1 sounds like chapter 20 or the other way
yeah,
around. Because you
yeah,
you want to make it look as if one person wrote it.
yeah, without a doubt. Which sometimes it sounds different because you are having a different day.
Yes.
So to have somebody, and I love having somebody look at my writing so that the feedback is important to make it a better I don't understand this, or this doesn't work, or why did you add this? And by doing it, it tells me what a reader would miss too. So just having
Exactly.
to read it is a really important element, as well as writing and helping. And you help people with websites too, right? With
Yes.
what they put up there and their abouts. Dear Lord, could you help people with their abouts? So I had the most horrific about it. It was the longest thing ever. And I was like, please, someone, dear God, help me out with this. And now it's a shorter version, still too long, but at least I'm getting, shorter and shorter. It's you just feel this need that you have to put all this information in, and you really don't.
Right. And, and getting back to like structuring sentences and everything, if someone's writing a novel and you have characters communicating with each other, you cannot expect them to not use contractions, to not have end a sentence in a preposition. And you're also going to have to think about what is the level of education of your character. I mean,
Right.
because then they're going to sound like there's some kind of stilted little, AI people
Yeah.
speaking in this book. So a lot of that depends, getting back to like writing in someone's voice or whatever, is to, if you're having a conversation, not only in a blog, but in a novel or a book that you're writing, you have to make it sound as if people are actually talking, not as if
Yeah.
you're, sitting there going, oh, wait, I can't end the sentence, all the sentences do not end in a preposition, and no one uses a contraction, and no one goes, In
Yeah.
fact, I don't know if anybody ever writes, but maybe we should put that in there because people
Maybe.
do it all the time.
Maybe in our last,
you know,
yeah, exactly, exactly. In our last minute, I'm a Take Action Success Coach. So what action could people take right after we finish this interview
is to
to,
actually take pen or pencil to paper and write just anything, just a little bit about yourself. If that's the easiest thing, is to just write a passage about oneself, or to write about my mood at this moment.
I love that.
You don't have to have anyone read it. I mean, it may be just for you, and
Yeah.
it may be the worst grammar you could ever imagine. Your first grade or your third grade teacher would reprimand you, but just do it. I mean, really, just do it.
Yeah, just do it. That's
Yeah.
that's how I got back into writing, is I just had to do it and get over what she said and get someone like you in my corner who knows how to edit things and put the commas where they're supposed to be, and make sure all my tenses are in the right direction. Doriana, you are just a gem to have around. I just enjoy you so much, and you're just so full of vitality and love. Every table has a story. I love that. That's probably why I'm enamored with old things and antiques, because I want to know the story behind them. So every antique that I have in my house, there is a story associated with it. Otherwise I wouldn't have bought it. So every story has a table, or every table has a story, is a really, really great phrase for people to remember when they're going through life. And you have one too. So hopefully you'll take your take action from Doriana. You can reach out to Doriana at rightconnectionllc@gmail.com. It's Right Connection, no S. I had said it with an S in the first segment. It's rightconnectionllc@gmail.com. And she will get back to you, and you guys could collaborate. Definitely, I encourage you to do it. Doriana, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us today on Healthy Lifestyle with Lorianne. I hope we've earned the privilege of your time. Again, I want to thank our guest today, Doriana Fontanella. Look for our next show next Saturday, 3 p.m., JVC Broadcasting and iHeartRadio. We can also be found on all major platforms, and we would be so grateful if you please like, follow, share, and subscribe. And please take a moment to join our Take Action community, where you can interact with other like-minded individuals and have access to tools and giveaways, challenges, and other yummies that we put out there. Until next time, I am Coach Lorianne, America's #1 Take Action Success Coach and Strategist. Let your dreams be bigger than your fears, and let your life be filled with joy. Until next time, have a great week, everyone. Thanks again, Doriana.
Thank you.